Hi, I'm Benjamin R. Johnson.
And I'm Michael Maliske.
What do you know about the Holocaust?
According to Eli Wiesel, the Holocaust was one single continuous night that has cursed his life forever. It has made a wound in his heart that will never heal.
We're here to show you about the terrible atrocity of the Holocaust through the eyes of the people that worked and lived in concentration camps. First, we interviewed Herr Kuchen, a survivor from the concentration camp in Dachau. When were you imprisoned?
I was arrested on November 10, 1938, for my own security. At the time, I was 21 years old. I was then sent to Dachau concentration camp. I wasn't released until 1941.
How were you captured?
The Nazis invaded my town. Synagogues were plundered and burned to the ground. Jewish-owned shops were destroyed. According to another Holocaust survivor at Dachau, Theodor Haas, it was the night the fires of hell engulfed the soul of humanity. All of the Jews were forced into ghettos and later exiled to Dachau.
What was it like in Dachau?
The life expectancy was short, and the inmates were abused. Everything important to us was taken away, including friends, family, and possessions. Eli Wiesel says on page 35 of Night that all he had left were his own shoes, despite that they were taken away later. There was constant hunger among prisoners, in addition to extremely cold weather. We were given a quarter loaf of bread to last us 3 days. Groups of 500 were stuffed in rooms designed to fit 50. Disease, malnutrition, and suicide were the leading causes of death. Over 25,000 people ended up dead at Dachau concentration camp.
Anything else you'd like to say?
Many terrible things happened in concentration camps during the Holocaust. I'm still mentally scarred from all the events that happened. I just feel lucky enough to have survived, rather than to have been severely injured or experimented upon by the doctors of the camps.
Next, we interviewed Dr. Tannenbaum, a former assistant doctor at Birkenau concentration camp. How did you come to be a doctor?
I wanted to aid my country in the war effort. I was always good at science, so when they came to recruit me, I joined the medical corps. I thought I was going to go to the war front, but the corps told me that I was needed in one of the camps holding political prisoners. When I got there, I was horrified. A man named Dr. Mengele was in charge of the hospital. He would stand at the front of a sea of heaving bodies, directing men to the left and women to the right. Only the able-bodied were allowed the luxury of life. The rest were turned to soot and ash.
What kind of experiments did you take part in?
I never laid a hand in any experiment. I was not qualified to aid or partake in the grotesque destruction of bodies, being neither intelligent nor sadistic enough for their taste. I was an errand runner for the doctors. I did, however, see the experiments. They told me that they were experimenting with hypothermia to aid the troops fighting at the Russian front. They aimed to first find the temperature at which the victim would die, and second, how best to revive the victim. The prisoner would be dropped into a large vat of near-freezing water until death or unconsciousness. Then the victim was placed under a variety of torture devices to try and resuscitate them. The doctors would use sun lamps, pour boiling water into the intestines, and set the victim into a vat of hot water. As I watched this mindless cruelty and disregard for the laws of humanity, I felt a complete and utter sense of hopelessness, for to object was to die.
Do you regret your actions?
I do not regret any actions that I made. I only regret every action that I did not make. At the time, I was terrified at what was going on in the camps, but more terrified at what would happen if I did something to change it. I would have been killed if I tried to stop what was going on. Our doctors did terrible things. Some would say more terrible than even the SS who guarded the camp. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Student Staffel. How did you come to be an officer at the Auschwitz concentration camp?
The day I became an SS officer was the proudest day of my life. I was admired by every man, woman, and child in the town where I grew up. I cannot help but feel that I was part of something magnificent. My outfit was sent to keep guard upon Germany's political prisoners in a camp known as Auschwitz. I was a bookkeeper there. I was to count the money confiscated from prisoners. What were you thinking at the time? What was I thinking? I thought nothing. When I first saw the gas chambers, I was in shock. But soon, however, it faded into routine. I did not take part in the daily massacres. Being a bookkeeper, I was required to watch. Do you have any regrets? The commandments tell us, thou shalt not kill. Is what I did murder? Can we call it that? I've been searching for answers for 60 years, and all that I ask is forgiveness. Forgiveness for all that I have done, and if that cannot be granted, I only wish to be understood.
The cruelties in concentration camps were brutal and horrific during the Holocaust. Many people, including Jews and enemies of the Nazis, suffered greatly, both physically and emotionally. Prisoners, doctors, and even some SS officers were victims of the Holocaust and concentration camps. Survivors are still scarred from what happened all that time ago. As Elie Wiesel says on page 25 of Night, "Never shall I forget that first night, the first night in camp, which has turned my life into one long night."